I'm Marla Hickerson, your host of Journey to Wellness. And I love talking about the intricacies of life, because life is for the living. But I find that a lot of us are not quite living, we're more in stress mode. Stress of the future, so we've got the monkey mind going on with worry. Stress of the past, because lots of us have unhealed trauma. We don't even realize that we're bringing the trauma forward. And then of course there's just stress of today, right? Like we have a lot of plates to fling around. Make sure the kids are driven to school, make sure they're fed, what to feed them, make sure the car's filled because it's freezing out there. Make sure that the parents are taken care of, the sidewalk is shoveled. There's so much to do. Stress, stress, stress. But you know what? Stress leaves us distracted from attaining well-being. And that's what I'd like to talk about today with my guest, Jackie Caroll. We're going to talk about how stress, distraction, how we can get pulled back from living true to well-being, attaining that sense of well-being within ourselves. So welcome, Jackie Caroll, to Journey to Wellness.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And I know a little bit about you because we did work together at one point, and I follow you on Facebook. So I've seen a little bit of your journey, but I'd love to hear from your mouth what your journey has meant to you, because it's, as I said, it's intricate. It's complicated. There's a lot to it, but I'd like to hear it from you. And I know for myself, when I talk about a journey to wellness, it starts from our childhood. So can we start from your childhood and just kind of make a progression?
Sure. I'm a middle child of 6 children, number 4. And I had quite an unconventional childhood because my father traveled a lot. We traveled all over the world. And we were basically moving countries every 2 to 3 years, which meant for us every 2 to 3 years we were the new kids in school. We were different accents, different cultures. Usually, of course, we started in the middle of the school year, which made us, you know, kind of a little bit like social outcasts for the first year or so. Okay. And then when I was 12, I went to boarding school for 5 years.
Oh, when you were 12, you went to boarding school. I knew you had gone to boarding school, and I was trying to figure out when. Oh, when you were 12. Okay.
Yeah, 12 to 18.
12 to 18. So then you mean your family settled then in one spot for that
No,
time?
my family was still traveling, and that was the reason why the 3 youngest children had been out of school for a year already. My mother had homeschooled us, and it was decided that for our education we really needed to be sent back to England to go to boarding school.
Okay,
So my youngest sister and I went to the same boarding school, a convent boarding school, for 5 years. 6 years.
Okay, 6 years of boarding school. And so, okay, so if I can say or ask you what childhood, if you can put in a few words, childhood versus the boarding school, what was the feeling for you? Like, what did you get out of who you were in that?
My childhood was very, although we moved a lot, and you know, we were always being uprooted, we had a very secure home life, a very secure family life.
Okay.
We were very tight as a family. So even though we went away to school, and we went back to home on holidays only, we were still a very cohesive family unit, which made us feel very strong, and also made us very adaptable. So it didn't matter what situations you were put into, you could find your way and adapt, and you always knew you had that basic core, which was very, very strong.
Okay, so you knew you could trust on each other to be there then?
Yeah.
Okay, oh, that's nice to know.
And even now as adults, we all live scattered across the world, and we don't see each other very often, but when we do see each other, it's like we saw each other yesterday.
Oh, nice.
So we don't dwell on the fact that we don't see each other for a couple of years. We really enjoy the time that we have together, and we're still very strongly bonded.
So it's like picking up where you left off.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, because that attachment is there. So it sounds like you made an attachment with your family.
Yeah.
So now you go to boarding school, and was there an attachment with them, or?
Good Lord, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, boarding school was one of those places where they tried to force you into a mold. You know, you were told how to dress, how to behave, and because you were there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, they really tried to force you into a mold that they wanted you to turn into.
Okay.
But fortunately, we're having, you know, good solid grounding in my own life, in my home family life. You know, you managed to keep some of my individuality.
Well, that's what I was wondering, because I can hear that there could be a conflict if you have a good foundation with your family life, but then you've got, it sounds like maybe order, or you've got loyalty, or you've got a certain way of being that doesn't say you can be you in that, then is there conflict within you? Maybe not at home, but just within you? Did you have a good sense of who you were?
I always had quite a strong personality, so I had a strong sense of who I was, but which was not what the nuns wanted me to be.
Okay.
So that created quite a bit of conflict.
Okay.
I was always getting into trouble, and fortunately my parents lived in Southeast Asia, so the nuns felt it was too expensive to phone my parents and complain about me every time I got into trouble. But you know, it was quite difficult because they wanted you to conform, and they wanted you to turn into basically a good housewife, regardless of what you felt you might want for your future. And I'm sure that's not their intention, but it was the way it came across at the time. You know, so individuality was not encouraged. You know, conformity was encouraged.
Conformity. So can you see how that conformity maybe went forward into, did you get married?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I did. Yeah.
Did you become, were you the career-oriented or were you the homemaker?
I was fortunate enough to be able to be a homemaker, but I also had a career that I could pick up and do in a casual basis as a nurse. I was very lucky in that way. I was very career-driven before I met my husband. In fact, I was one of those people who didn't stick in relationships for very long. You know, if somebody became too interested or became too serious, I was gone. And with my job, I could move whenever I wanted to, because it was very easy to get a job as a nurse. But when I settled down with my husband, I was really lucky to be able to be a stay-at-home mum.
And when you say settle down, where did you settle down to?
Red Rock.
Red Rock?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, my husband's from the north of Northern Ontario, and I met him on a fly-in reserve, and we initially settled in Red Rock with our children.
Oh, so, okay.
Awesome. Which was lovely. It was a very small community, and I was very welcomed by everybody there, and it was really nice.
Where were you coming from before that?
Pikangikum.
Where?
Pikangikum, a fly-in reserve. We met on a fly-in reserve.
Okay, and then where did you go before that?
Before that?
Where's the accent from?
The UK.
Okay.
Because I was in school in England for 6 years. And then I did my nursing training there. So.
Okay.
So although I call myself English, my mother's not from England, my father was from England, and we travelled a lot. But I identify with the UK because I was there for the longest. And
probably from all your travelling, I think you probably have a mix of
yeah, I do.
Identity, I think, in there too, I would
My
think.
first language was Spanish.
Oh my.
And then I lived in the West Indies for a while, so I had a strong West Indian accent. Then we lived in the States for a few years. So yes, my accent is a mélange.
Very interesting. You have a storybook just right there.
I know, eh?
But there's so much more to share, but we need to take a break. So when we come back, we're going to talk about, well, what happened? Like, what happened? We'll be back. Welcome back to Journey to Wellness. So Jackie, where do we leave off from Red Rock?
Well, after Red Rock, we relocated to Thunder Bay for my husband's job, and I decided to go back to work casually because nursing was a vocation for me. I loved it, and I didn't want to give it up completely. But it was very important to me that I only worked when my husband was available to be with our children. So we worked it out that way.
So child rearing was more important than the work itself.
Than working for me. It was, you know, we arranged our lives around one salary when we moved to Thunder Bay, so that I could stay at home, and any extra money that I earned was travelling money for me to return to the UK as frequently as I was able to with my kids, so they could get to know my family as well over there. Otherwise it would have been very difficult, because this was the time before Facebook and FaceTime and stuff like that. So, which makes it sound like a long time ago, but it wasn't.
No. Well, how old are your children now, just out of?
22 and 24.
Oh, okay, so we're talking a few years here.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that happened in those few years, so going onwards from that?
I worked at the hospital for a few years, and then unfortunately I developed an anaphylactic latex allergy. I was allergic to the gloves. And I was a labour room nurse, so because I was trained as a midwife. So I was WSIB'd out of my position, and then eventually I had to leave the hospital because they couldn't give me full-time work. And I went to work at Norwest on Simpson Street, which is where we met. And then I've had some significant health issues in the last 5-6 years, which have ended up with me actually ending up leaving work completely and going on to a medical retirement.
Medical retirement, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I'd like to ask you what went from that moving forward, but no, there's a lot in those years. So let's get into the deepness, the richness of what happened in those few years of when you first found out that you were sick and what happened.
Well, in 2013, I developed blood clots in my legs and my lungs, and I was off work for 4 months. I went back to work. Initially, I had gone back to work after 6 weeks, and I was still too unwell to go back to work, so I was off work then. And at that time, I had not actually wanted to go back to work full time, but there was no way they could offer me a part-time position, because it really was a wake-up call to me as to where I wanted to be in my life. But I did go back to work full time, and I really enjoyed it. I absolutely loved my job there. It was wonderful. The people were fantastic, and my job was wonderful. And then I developed Parkinson's, and my husband said to me, I worked for a year after my initial diagnosis, unmedicated, which was very difficult. And then I was given a double whammy. I was diagnosed with MS on top of that.
Oh my goodness.
So I had gone to work one day, left to go to a doctor's appointment, and never went back to work.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and it was a decision that was partly came from work and partly came from my husband, who said to me, he said, Jackie, you know what? The universe is just saying to you, maybe you shouldn't be working now. Maybe it's time for you to start thinking about your own health and your own wellness, because work was very stressful, and you know, it was just not good for my health to be at work all the time.
Yes, because I hear that you went from being a mom, working casual, to now working full-time. Did you have this mentality that they just can't do it without me? Because I find when we start working and working, putting all our time into it, it's like, now who will do it if I can't do it anymore?
Well, partly, I think it's, as my children got older, I used to volunteer in the school with my children all the time, and then once they got older and they didn't need me in the school, then that's when I went to work full-time.
Okay.
I think as a nurse, I have that personality that's always looking to fix something, you know, so you need to be needed.
Yes.
And I wasn't needed in school anymore. So, and I was working straight days, which meant no evenings, no weekends, so I was available still to my children. And the more you get into your job, the more you invest in it. And I suppose, yes, maybe to a point, it did come to a point where I felt like, you know, they couldn't do it without me. But of course, any job really will not fall apart if you're not there.
Yes, exactly.
You know? So.
And I see you brought something.
I did.
Would you like to?
I was part of a project recently for a Facebook group where women empower women. And one of the projects that the woman who designed the website, the group, asked us to do was to think about experiences in our lives and how they made us feel, and do that through photographs. And so I brought these along to help kind of explain a little bit about how my journey happened for me after my diagnosis with Parkinson's and leaving my job. And actually it's interesting, as when I was thinking about coming here today, talking about challenges that we have in our lives and how we respond to them, because the first overwhelming experience I had with, the first overwhelming sensation was guilt, was massive guilt. I don't know if you can see that. My printer made it very small. It was a feeling of guilt as to what I had done. I felt like, what have I done to my family? What have I done to my children? What have I done to my husband? I brought this huge responsibility on them for our futures. I felt very, very guilty. And I felt that I had to pretend to everybody. I had to pretend to be feeling much better about it than I was, because other people's responses were so, I knew that people were devastated. I was young, I've got Parkinson's and MS, and people's responses were absolute devastation, and I felt responsible for that.
So put on the mask that everything's okay.
Exactly, and I have to pretend.
Yeah.
I had to make sure the words that came out of my mouth were happy words, strong words for them, not for myself. I couldn't express myself in the way that I felt. I had to make sure everybody else felt okay about it. And then I just decided one day, well, not by myself entirely. I went to a counselor who said, it's not your problem how people respond to you. They have to deal with that themselves. And I learned to just accept the me.
Yes.
Accept myself in my new form.
Yes.
And not allow myself to be limited. So
Exactly.
I live life by being unlimited.
Perfect. Love that.
You know?
Love that. Unlimited.
Yeah. I am unlimited. I have limitations in my life. I've learned to accept them. I live my life to the fullest, knowing what I can do and what I can't do, and I've given myself permission to have limits. but not to be limited by what's happened to me.
Exactly, and knowing the difference between the two.
Yep.
Because one sounds more empowering. It's not worrying about the objectives, so worrying about all the forces out there and making everybody else happy. It's bringing the power back within and knowing that we can do something about our own health and about how we can influence others, not impact them so much with the pain and the grief, but yet we can be ourselves and allow them to nurture us with being ourselves, empowering on both sides.
I don't want to be seen as a person who's got an illness. That was one of the big things that I found, was that I had lost my identity, because before I met my husband, I was a nurse and I was a midwife. Then I was a wife. Then I was a mother. Then I was, then I was a working mum. And now I'm the person who has Parkinson's.
Yeah.
I'm so and so's wife who has Parkinson's. I don't want that to be my identifier. I don't want people to think I'm sick, because I'm not. I'm obscenely well. I'm extremely healthy. I'm very well. I just live with a condition.
Exactly.
And it's not going to limit me.
And that's what we're going to talk about moving forward. Is I hear that it was all about taking care of everybody else, and now it's taking care of Jackie. Who is Jackie? And that's what we're going to talk about when we come back from break. And welcome back to Journey to Wellness. And Jackie, what did you learn for yourself in all of this triumph and struggle and whatever? What's one word you want to put around it? If you can put a word around your experience thus far.
Permission.
Permission. Excellent. Permission for?
I had to learn to give myself permission to experience emotions. I had to give myself permission to have limitations, to grieve for my changed future. I had to give other people permission as well to look after me for a change, because I've always been in the caregiver role.
Yeah.
Not only with my children, but with my profession, with my friends. I've always been that person where somebody will, if there's a problem, somebody will phone me and I will fix it for them. And I was also extremely fiercely independent. I was never somebody who would ever ask for help, and if somebody offered it, I would usually say no, I'm fine. I had to learn to say no, I'm not fine, and accept permission, and accept help, and actually reach out for help too. That was a huge thing for me, was learning to reach out.
Can I say something? Just because, like I say, I always go back to the childhood, because I can hear the link there. It almost sounds like those are the qualities you learned in boarding school. To take care of yourself, to put yourself last, to make sure that everybody else is taken care of.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, yes. It's neat when you can see the link, and then how you can see how you've deprived yourself, because that's what you...
I suppose I never thought of it as being depriving myself. I thought of it as independence. I could look after myself.
Okay.
I always felt that, and that was very, not so much ingrained into me, but it was something that was very strong in my personality. I could always look after myself. I didn't need somebody else to look after me. And that's one thing I've learned from this experience, is that I do need to have somebody help me sometimes. And it gives other people pleasure to be able to help. The pleasure that I got out of helping people, I'm now allowing other people to have, with me.
Because it's when I say deprivation, it's because when we can do it ourselves, I don't need anyone else, we aren't accepting nurture very easily. We aren't nurturing ourselves. Yeah. Exactly, and that's what you're saying is, now I can open up to allowing nurture to come in.
Yeah, I'm allowing somebody else to nurture me.
Yes.
Which,
and nurture yourself.
And I think as human beings, we need to have that. And I have 2 boys and a husband, so I live in a masculine household. They're not naturally nurturers.
Yes.
But no, they've learned to nurture. I don't know whether things would have been different if I'd had girls, but it is what it is. And my husband and my children have been wonderful. They're very nurturing, but they also know my personality, so they know when to come in and when to step back. Because as much as I try to give myself permission, I'm still fiercely independent. I'm not going to be limited, and I can do it all.
And so it's knowing that balance, because that's a great asset to have, but we have to balance the masculine of that energy with the feminine of the nurturing. Okay, but now I need to take a break and accept some help or accept some support.
And it's a hard lesson to learn.
It is.
Very hard
it is. I know.
It humbles you.
Yes.
And you
Yes.
do realize that people can do just as well as you.
Yes.
They can wash the dishes just as well as you
Yes.
and do the laundry.
Yes.
So now I've let him do it, and he's very good at it.
Oh. Well, then I'm wondering, because of your health conditions, that would mean that you would need more rest then. That would mean that you would need certain self-care
Yeah.
regimens going on for yourself. So what would that look like for you?
I've learned that I do need to accept that I need to, say, nap in the afternoons. I don't get embarrassed if I have to go lie down. I will do that wherever I am. I need a certain amount of rest. I need to eat well. I need to keep physically very active. I work out 3 times a week, and you know, I have to focus a lot on myself.
Yeah, self-care.
Yeah, which is a tricky thing for me to have learned how to do. But you know, I try and keep positive, and I don't fear my future. I don't dwell on what might happen, because other people who live with Parkinson's, their journey is not my journey. People tell me, you know, my future is going to be limited, and you know, somebody actually told me my future is going to be awful. And I said, but you know, that's not what I see.
Yes.
That's not my plan.
Yes.
My journey is to stay healthy and well, and respect what my body's telling me, and to stay, you know, as healthy as I can, and be a shaky old lady, you know.
And that's where the independence has to come in, because you have to have your own truth about you, not listen to everything else that's out there trying to bring you down.
Yeah, I think everybody has to realize that it doesn't matter what has happened to you, what illness may come to you, what tragedy may come to you. You make your own journey, and you choose what the outcome is going to be.
Exactly. And I know that you do boxing,
Yes.
and I know you do painting, because I've seen your painting.
Yeah, I started painting actually to occupy my time
Okay.
when I was first diagnosed, when I first left work.
Okay.
So I'm self-taught.
Nice. I like your work, so we'll have to show it. Is there anything else that you'd like to share?
Now you got me.
That's okay. Thank you so much, Jackie. I know that we can really get into this in depth more so, because your life is so rich, and I know that you can have probably a lot more awarenesses come out the longer we could talk about this, but that's another tea. So I'd like to mention, in finishing off, that I think what Jackie is learning, and what's a lesson for us all, is to pay attention to you, not take the focus off of everybody else and pay attention to you. So pay attention to your body, your emotional body. Tap into the emotions, because your emotional body is always trying to talk to you. It starts with the whisper, and if you don't pay attention to the whisper, it moves to the yell, and if you miss the yell, you get hit by the 2x4. So a whisper can just start with your heart beating faster. It could be shallow breathing. It could be holding your breath. Then the yell is the headache and the body aches and the crankiness and the depressed mood. And then the 2x4, it could be the diseases, the illnesses, injury, marriages breaking down, making big mistakes, resorting to violence, divorce. So we need to go back. We have to stop distracting ourselves and start going back and paying attention to us, ourselves, going inwards and saying, it's okay to take care of me.
It's not selfish.
It's not.
It's
No.
not selfish. It's self-aware.
It is.
Don't be afraid to be selfish.
Exactly. Thank you. That's exactly what it, and that's one of your biggest lessons.
Yeah. I learned how to be selfish.
Yes.
Yeah.
Me. Go back to me. And that's what Journey to Wellness, I say, it's about starting the consciousness to gaining well-being for yourself. Starts with being in the moment with you. It's not about somebody else, it's about you. Thank you for joining us in Journey to Wellness.